Hello everyone, Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and in this video I'm discussing poetry reading. And don't scream, don't run away. It's not as scary as it sounds, although you may have some teachers from time to time that take the life out of poetry, and that's the problem. Sometimes we can become so academic or so pedantic that we remove the soul or we remove the enjoyment out of reading poetry. So this video is going to give you a few tips that can help you when you're analyzing a poem, whether you're reading it just for your own pleasure or whether you're reading it for a class. There are some things you can do that will help you to analyze the poem a little more easily. Of course, you have to follow your teachers or professors' instructions as well, but I think these tips will help you along the way. A lot of students, they look at a poem or they read it and they don't understand it and they just want to throw it away, and then sometimes they just make something up that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the poem at all. So first things first is relax, enjoy the poem that you're reading or poems that you're reading. They are meant to be enjoyed. They're like songs without music, but some poems get set to music as well. Lyrics are basically poems. And so try to treat it that way. Try to imagine it even as a song sometimes. It depends on the poem, of course. They don't all lend themselves easily to songs or music, but the main thing is to sit, relax, enjoy it, let it absorb into you. Try to feel the emotion or the sensibilities of the song. Try to feel the meanings of the song without doing a lot of academic work at first. Just enjoy it. Also make annotations if you can. If it's your own copy, you can write in the margins. It's just taking notes. That's what annotations are. But you can draw lines and arrows and stars and make notes. If it isn't yours, see if you can make a copy. You might be able to scan and print a copy or print it off a computer, the same poem, and then you can mark it up. There's nothing like sitting and writing all over a piece of poetry or even prose for that matter if it belongs to you. Don't deface school property or someone else's book. But it's something that when you come back to it, you can see what you thought even years or decades ago, and see, do I still feel this way about this particular poem? It's also a good way to enter into the poem, so that's something you can think about. Then ask yourself, and also read a poem more than once. Most poems need to be read at least several times before they really start to become clear to you and you really feel the rhythm and feel everything that's in the poem. One reading is not enough. What is the subject of the poem? What does the poem say about the subject? So the subject might be about love, but what is this particular poem saying about love? Why is the title the title? Just as quite a while ago now, I guess I made a video about prose. The title can be very important. In some cases, it isn't that important, but in other cases, it is. So it's something to look at because often we read the title, or sometimes people just skip over the title. Often, when I have students read to me, they don't even read the title to me, whether it's a poem or a book or a novel. Read the title, think about the title as you're reading the poem. It might show up within the poem, it might be one of the lines, or it might not, but it still may be relatable in some way and it might help explain some of the poem to you. How does the poem affect you? That's very important because poetry is intended to make you feel something and sometimes to make you think something, but it's also to make you feel like music, as I mentioned before. So, how does this poem affect you? And the first time through, it might not. People get so frustrated. It doesn't affect me at all. I have no idea what they're talking about. Read it again, read it again. Language. Pay attention to the language used. Is it formal or informal language? Is the diction concrete or abstract? So if it's abstract, it's going to be much more challenging usually to understand because you have to sort of dig in to get the meaning. If the diction is concrete, it's generally, anyway, going to be much more in your face and you'll understand it right away. But why is it written this way? Why did the author decide to use concrete language? Or why did the author decide to be abstract? Or is there a mix in the poem? Are the words talking about love or spirituality or learning or war? What is the topic that it's talking about? What are they trying to convey in this poem? Look for figurative language or poetic devices like metaphors and simile, hyperbole, puns, any of the literary devices, assonance, alliteration, all of these, look for them within the poem. It might help with meaning or even the feeling of the poem as you read it more than once, but it will also help you if you need to analyze the poem because that's something you can talk about. A lot of the time students say, I don't know what to say. I don't even know where to start. Well, start with the meaning, start with the language, start with the figurative language. Um, there's a lot right there that you can say about the poem. Now, it depends on the poem. Some of them don't have a lot of poetic devices in them, but some of them do. We miss them on the first read normally, so that's why I read again and again. Structure and form. Pay attention to the organization of the poem. How is it put together? And sometimes they use very different structures. The lines can go diagonally or they can go in and out. The stanza patterns can be quite different. The punctuation can be very different. Certain authors have their own style of punctuation that you might see over several poems and ask yourself, why do they do that? Or why did they do it in this particular poem? Is there a reason for this kind of punctuation or this kind of sentence structure that seems to be used? And the language patterns, are there patterns? First of all, are there patterns? And then if there are, what are they? And what do they do for the poem? What does it lend to the poem? How does it change the way perhaps the audience, which is the reader, which is you, how you feel and what you get out of the poem? Do the words appear in an unusual order, or is there a particular pattern that lends emphasis to the poem, for example? Check for repetition of words. So often there are repeated words in poems, but how are they repeated and why are they repeated in the way that they are? Are they building suspense? Are they, again, being used for emphasis? Or is it just simply the rhyme scheme and made it easy? I don't know. There are many different reasons or possible reasons. Remember, your analysis of a poem would not be the same as mine. It would not be the same as, Mary or John or George or whoever, and that's fine. But you do need to back it up with something. When you're doing an analysis, like I said, some students just write anything. They didn't really understand the poem, so they just write something very obscure and hope that it means something to the poem. You don't want to do that. You want to try to connect to the poem in some way so that what you write, it might not be anything like my analysis, but you have some evidence or some proof to back up what you're saying. And maybe when I read yours, I'll think, oh, I like what you're saying. I still probably agree with mine as well, but I might even incorporate some of yours into my new analysis of this poem. So reading what other people think about poetry can be helpful. I would be caution you, if you're doing this for school, not to do too much of that ahead of time because it might influence you too much and you don't want to plagiarize someone else's work. It's better to do your own first. Tone and mood, those are other things that you can look at. What is the author's tone? And that is the attitude of the writer. And what is the attitude of the writer toward nature, the environment, toward love, toward war, toward peace, toward whatever the topic in the poem is? What is the attitude? That is the author's tone. And the mood is the atmosphere of the text. What kind of mood are you getting from this poem? And what emotions are stirred by the reading? Remember, poetry is meant to touch you, it's meant to mean something to you. And there are some that, I honestly, I have read many times and I can't seem to extract very much from them. I can still write about them, but I would have to stick more with the language and the figurative devices and things of that nature because I might not have had a particular emotion or maybe meaning still remains relatively obscure. But I can write about that. I can say the meaning seems to be quite obscure. Here's what it might mean, and then say why it might, but not have a definitive answer. That's okay too. We don't always have definitive answers. And with poetry, generally speaking, there should be many possible interpretations. There isn't one right interpretation. Even the author uh, doesn't have the so-called right interpretation. They know what they were thinking when they were writing it and what they wanted it to mean. Most, I think, would say that they write in a way that is open to many interpretations and that they had many thoughts themselves. It wasn't one thought. When I write my stories, in fact, there's a lot of thoughts coming in, and the characters themselves even have a lot of thoughts and emotions and moods, and there isn't one right. And I might read one of my own stories that I spent a very long time writing and look at it again and think differently about a particular scene or character than I did when I first wrote it. So don't worry about that. That's fine, and that's the way it should happen. I hope that these tips will help you if you want or need to read some poetry. Let me know if anything helps you out, or how you approach poetry, or what your ideas are, or even your favorite poem. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave it in the comments below. You can always shoot me an email. Check out the website. It'll be in the description below as well as links to my books that you can also read for free if you have Kindle Unlimited. um, don't forget to like the video. I hope you liked it. Give it a thumbs up. Push that subscribe button. It really helps a lot. The channel is growing. It's doing better and better all the time. So it's free. You just push that button. It doesn't really hurt you, and it helps the channel a lot. You can donate to the channel. There's a way to do that in the description too. In the meantime, keep learning, keep having fun. It's Ron from L.T.L Tutoring Central. Until next time, bye-bye for now.